welcome everyone to our Conservation Connector this time around. And really excited to welcome Lindsay Keeney and Sergio Vargas. Both are with the Illinois Environmental Council, and Lindsay is also a PSCC board member. Lindsay is Chief Program Officer, Conservation and Agriculture at IEC, and Sergio is Policy Manager, Chicago Land Conservation. And I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay and Sergio to introduce themselves and our program. Thanks for everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks
Great.
for having us, Cynthia. I'm Lindsay. I'm, like Cynthia said, Chief Programs Officer at IEC. I lead our conservation and sustainable ag teams. And Sergio's here too. He
Yeah,
does a lot of our
again,
Chicagoland work.
yeah. My name's Sergio Vargas, help with the Chicagoland conservation and connecting everything that goes on in this larger region to our larger conservation team, making sure that we're all on the same page and understanding all the work that's going on. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Today we'll be talking about the logic and processes that IEC undergoes when we work to understand how we engage with legislators, strategies we employ, and how other nonprofits can utilize similar strategies that are within their right to do so, as well as understanding what other limitations might be, and how folks can engage in even more powerful advocacy at their respective organizations or personally.
Yeah, and I checked out the registration list and was thrilled to see a lot of names I don't recognize, which is fantastic. It means we're not talking to the same old people about the same things. So as we get into the presentation, it can be pretty informal. I'm going to monitor the chat and maybe bubble up any questions that I think are valuable to Sergio as he walks us through some of the slides. But I would just say feel free to drop any questions or things that you're thinking in the chat, and we can kind of tailor the information that we're giving to you guys as questions come up too.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And yes, we're open for this to be pretty informal. So please ask questions. So we'll begin with a brief overview of our agenda today. We'll be going over kind of what our objectives and the overview of what what our intended outcomes are going to be, why advocacy matters, and then understanding the difference between advocacy and lobbying and how nonprofits with C3 status can engage effectively, preparing for advocacy, effective communication with legislators, organizing impactful tours, which is just one of many strategies that IEC utilizes to build relationships and talk about the issues across all of our work. Mobilizing community support, which is incredibly important. We want to continue to build and support our large coalition, have folks understand what's going on, how they can get plugged into the issues that we're engaging with. And then measuring success and continuing to refine our strategy. We're always continually trying to improve everything that we do here at IEC. And it's folks like you that help push us to really reflect and understand how we can always improve our strategies. And then we'll continue with some interactive Q&A and some closing remarks. And so generally just about IEC, since 1975, IEC's worked to safeguard Illinois, its people, its plants, and its animals, and the natural systems in which all life depends by building power for the people and the environment. And we represent over 130 environmental organizations operating in Illinois, ranging from not just organizations that focus on environmental work, but also, workforce rights, immigrants' rights, a lot of different organizations who understand the connection between their work and the importance of the environment. And we continue to advance sound environmental laws and policies at all levels of government, mostly at the state level, but again, because myself, I'm located within our Chicago office, also engaged in City of Chicago level work, and I've also participated and engaged in work at the larger regional level and different county levels as well. So we're really just trying to understand how we can continue to plug in and understand how we can influence this massive change at all levels throughout the state. And so, firstly, our goal is moving from passion for conservation to real world policy action. But we want to continue to emphasize everyone's unique and crucial role in conservation efforts, right? We are one piece of this larger conservation mosaic. Um, you know, again, we represent over 130 different organizations that have different focuses, that have different capacities, and they all do really brilliant work that's necessary and helps support what we do at the end of the day, right? Some organizations really focus on massive community building efforts that really help amplify the work that we do and gets eyes on all of the issues that we continue to engage with. So it's important that we continue to set expectations regarding tangible strategies that folks can immediately implement or think about, and find ways to include that within their own workflows or within their own organizations.
Yeah, I talk all the time about how the conservation people are the best people on the planet. They are the most passionate, the most engaged, the most knowledgeable um of I, I will brag because I'm the conservation team lead. So I will say of like the entire mosaic of environmentalists. They're just my favorite people in the world. But one of our, very few flaws that we have, one of them is that we are hyper focused on our passions and the things that matter to us, and the flower or the snake or the habitat type that we love and we've committed to advocating for and protecting. And so knitting us all together and pulling us up to that 1,000-foot view and thinking about strategic advocacy for the entire conservation movement is the challenge that we have ahead of us in the next 5 to 10 years in Illinois, I think. So that is our homework and our strategy and role as a team going forward. The conservation team is to really think about how do we play a little less defense. So how do we, because right when Belleville Prairie is threatened, when the turtle trapping bill is dropped, we all advocate. We all do some really great grassroots organizing. We get the folks who have the knowledge and can defend to Springfield to where they need to be. We organize events. We do all that in defense really well. We don't do a lot of offense. So thinking about how do we lay the groundwork now for something that we may want later? How do we build really positive relationships with our decision makers so that when we call and ask for support or funding, they already know who we are and we don't have to start from ground zero when it comes time to take those next steps. So that's just sort of the framing of what we're thinking about moving from all of our passion around conservation to some really strategic forward thinking work.
Yeah, and that dovetails really nicely with our next slide, which goes over why advocacy matters, right? The importance of advocacy in our larger conservation efforts. And Lindsay has some really great real world examples that she'll be detailing more specifically that really shows the cause and effect relationship between the building and continuation of this type of advocacy.
Yeah. Sergio asked me for some examples. I guess this means that you must be getting old when people are asking, hey, can you fill in like what's happened in the last 10, 20 years in conservation? But we are a strong group and we've done some really cool things. So we formed the Partners for Parks and Wildlife Coalition in 2004, and that was in response. Many of you were involved. PSCC was involved. And that was in response to the zeroing out of conservation funding in the state budget that year. That was a very effective coalition. We partnered with the park districts and successfully defended against funding cuts in 2005, the next year in 2006, and then brought the coalition back together in 2011 in response to some funding cuts as well. But that is a place where having those relationships already intact from 2006 was really nice in 2011 when this came back up. We had those partnerships and that name recognition and that already in place. So that's one example. Another one that a lot of you guys will be familiar with is our advocacy around the Natural Areas Stewardship Grant. That was Fran, who's a PSCC board member, IEC. PSCC was super involved, worked to set up the Natural Areas Stewardship Fund to give us another source of strategic conservation funding. And this one took a lot of tours, a lot of site visits, a lot of explaining to legislators why this mattered, and building and putting forth those relationships. So those are just a couple examples. There's a lot more. And I think we'll get to some of them in the slides coming forward too. But Brandon Road, I also mentioned in there, that's one where we've taken legislators out to a lot of conservation properties. We've canoed in the Cache River with them. We've been out on the Illinois River. We've introduced legislators to things like, what is a silver carp? If we just say those words in their office in Springfield across a desk from them in their suits, it's a lot less impactful than when they're out on your sites in a kayak and a silver carp jumps into their canoe. And now we have Tim Butler who stands up on the floor and talks about this experience and how he really doesn't want to see them get into Lake Michigan. And we get to draw that connection. Well, Brandon Road needs funding. Here's where we can build you into a champion for that work, and build champions in the legislature that become advocates to their colleagues around these same issues is another really fantastic strategy.
Absolutely. And that really continues to emphasize the importance of collective voices to influence these decisions, right? Forming these coalitions is a massive undertaking in itself, right? Getting everyone kind of working together and in lockstep, understanding the issue at hand, working on the same set of facts, and really coordinating an effective effort at the end of the day, really push some strategic advocacy that's heavily informed and again has really compelling facts or figures that connect with legislators and as well as the general public. Next, we have some more detail regarding advocacy versus lobbying, how we can engage effectively within IRS guidelines and restrictions, right? So nonprofits, especially land trusts, have important roles in advocacy, but they have to respect IRS lobbying restrictions, right? Advocacy includes education, general issue awareness, and promoting community involvement, which is completely permitted for nonprofits. Lobbying, for instance, specifically refers to attempts to influence legislation, either directly to the lawmaker themselves or indirectly through grassroots campaigns. And nonprofits are permitted to some limited lobbying, but tracking and clearly distinguishing lobbying from general advocacy is really essential and is the big difference between different nonprofit statuses, right? So it's really important to continue to review IRS guidelines and lobbying and advocacy annually. And if you are still unsure about actions that your organization is taking, always consult legal counsel if questions continue to arise to ensure and maintain compliance, right? But some of the key things that is completely allowed, are, organizing
I said okay.
organizing informational tours and educational events, sharing research and data, fact sheets, these things that continue to educate and inform folks, as well as encouraging community engagement and public participation, right? And then there are some activities that are more restricted, which includes this grassroots lobbying, and understanding communication with legislators that are in regard to urging support or opposition. And I think this next slide will help really uh, understand different contexts, as well as like how folks can talk about different bills, for instance, right? So what's allowed, which is this non-lobbying piece, right? This educational context, providing neutral, factual information uh, about a bill, without advocating for or against its passage, right? It's completely fine to say, uh, Bill HB 123 proposes funding for wetland restoration, which could impact local ecosystems, right? Saying things very matter-of-factly, right, is completely within your organization's rights to do, as well as sharing status updates on bills, committees, sponsors, and hearings, right? Again, the main focus or difference is the sharing of information, right, without making a position or urging folks to take a particular action, right? And then we have another example where House Bill 123 is currently under review by the Environment Committee and sponsored by a particular representative, right? Also, this is a really important one. Representing the impacts of a particular bill, right? You can completely explain the benefits or consequences of a piece of legislation objectively, right? Based on a multitude of evidence or data that you gather or you're presented with, right? So an example of that would be this House bill would allocate funds to restore 500 acres of wetlands, improving local water quality, right? And again, I think the big difference is the fact that it's neutral, it's fact-based, and you're really just helping folks or legislators understand the impacts, right? It's completely within your right to be able to share what the impacts of different legislation would be, right?
And
And you can also, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add that we pulled these slides from our Civics for Environmentalists presentation, which I'll drop the link to the YouTube in the chat. But the reason we pulled these is these are the number one questions that we get from land trusts and our C3 partners when we ask what the barriers are to getting more engaged in policy. It's a lot of confusion around, well, we're C3, we don't want to jeopardize any of that. So I think this stuff is just, it's really helpful to me. I live in C3 land in the program space. So I do a lot of issue advocacy with legislators and with decision makers. I talk a lot about the issue of wetlands not being protected, the issues of nutrient pollution from agricultural runoff into our rivers, lakes, and streams. So that is something that you can always talk about. You can always talk about an issue with a decision maker. It does not cross that line into lobbying until you're asking for a position on a specific bill. And then with the caveat that we're not your lawyers and we can't give you legal advice, and you should always check with your own lawyer. That's the general vibe. But I'll hand it back over to you, Sergio, for some of these specific examples because they're really great.
Yeah, and again, hosting informational sessions, right? Whether it is a tour or a briefing or any other type of event, these are things that are completely within your organization's right to coordinate and do without explicitly urging support or opposition. And again, laying out the facts of what a piece of legislation would have, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about wetlands, right, and wetland restoration, we can point to so many facts and figures about the benefits of wetlands, right? Whether it's water retention, flood mitigation, habitat for birds and other wildlife, um, the improvement of water quality, the improvement of clean air, right? These are all things that are backed by research and are clearly outlined in data, and it's completely reasonable to share this information and really allow legislators to understand and learn about these massive benefits, and not necessarily tying it directly to a piece of legislation, but having this information and improving legislators and their team's understanding of different real world impacts of legislation, and the benefits of these types of unique ecosystems, or really whatever issue your organization is focused on, right? It's important just to continue to focus on important key facts, and the more interesting, relevant, and compelling those facts and figures are, it'll really improve your ability to connect and compel legislators and their teams regarding different issues. So next we have preparing for advocacy, right? IEC goes through a particular strategy of figuring out how we define our clear legislative priorities, how do we identify and target key decision makers, and also pulling in and amplifying the importance of our partnerships, right, with nonprofits or local businesses or different community leaders. So it's important to understand and identify the decision makers who influence your priorities, and it's incredibly important to understand the how important building broad coalitions with all these different groups are, and building credibility and strength as we prepare our different legislative priorities. And Lindsay, if you have anything to input on this section as well.
I think you got it. This is our big strategy, is that we are really going to think through who those key decision makers are. We do this power analysis every year that many of you have heard me talk about, maybe actually a lot of new names. So we do this big power analysis where we look at all the decision makers. At the state level, it would be legislators. We look at how often they're involved in our environmental bills, how much they're engaged in things like the Green Caucus, or allyship bills that kind of are parallel or have a lot of commonality with bills that we're interested in. We look at who is responsive to us when we ask them to come out on tours and to engage in listening sessions and talk with our partners. We take into account information about who donates to their campaigns and their voting histories. And we kind of dump all of this into a big spreadsheet. And we look at if they're the type of folks who are responsive to lobbyists. Are they someone that you need to go to their office and lobby them? Or are they someone who really just cares what their constituents say? And so a bunch of phone calls from constituents can really push them. Or are they people that are really driven by industry? And those are the people that really have sway with them. We try to get a handle on that for each legislator and then rank them, whether they have a good, we run a green caucus. So we have a green caucus full of legislators that we give legislative updates to. We work with them a lot to carry our bills. So they get a green caucus score, whether they're like a 5, whether they're a hard green caucus, they're like all the way in. They support us and they always vote for our bills. And they are someone that we can really count on. All the way down to a 1, which is someone we won't waste our time on. They are a legislator who is pretty much actively against the environment, probably really aligned with industry. And then we have those 2, 3, and 4s. 4 is like almost there. Sometimes they might align with, Farm Bureau or someone who has a lot of influence over them and is sometimes at odds with us. And then twos are people that maybe we can move up to a three. Threes are people that are right there in the middle and might be close. And so those twos, threes, and fours are always the folks that we're trying to move one more. We're not trying to make them the top environmental champion. We're not trying to make them the champion. We're trying to move them one step up closer to being a champion for our bills and our work or issues. So we build that big power analysis and we look at who in the committees that we care about, who in the conservation and ag committees may we be able to move with some targeted education or and then we craft strategies around them. So maybe someone can only be, we think they can be moved by some outreach from constituents. And we know that your land trust owns property and you all live in this particular legislator's district. We might tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, can you really focus on this relationship, invite them to your events, get them out, and you become a really important advocate in that way. Just doing your normal work as a land trust and involving this community member who also happens to be a legislator in Springfield. So part of our job is to look at all of those data points and make some recommendations around who those targets are and who we want to lift up. And sometimes it's people that maybe we just get some good intel on, like Rep. Kiker carries a lot of our prescribed burn work, and that's just because it's an issue that he cares about, and it's sometimes he doesn't align with us on other things, but is it really an advocate for prescribed burns and that being a really great tool for conservation on the land. So identifying and targeting the key decision makers, that is our job, but it is so great when you guys give us your intel, you report back on how your conversations went, and you tap in when we say, hey, can you deliver this message for us as a constituent, as a property owner, as the expert on the ground, right? Because if we could work ourselves out of a job, it would be fantastic if every legislator would just call you as their local land trust and say, hey, how do you feel about this funding bill that came across my desk, or this piece of policy that touches conservation? If they had a good enough relationship with you guys that they would call you and ask, I would be happy as a clam somewhere on a beach, not having a job. But those are the pieces that I'm excited to build with you all.
Yeah, and that data information is so key and helps guide our decision making, right? And it's important to also note that it's not just quantitative data, right? As Lindsay mentioned in multiple examples, right? There's that qualitative data that we continue to try and track, and this power analysis is a continually changing living document, right? Where we're always looking for more information, more data that can really improve our understanding of the layout of legislative leaders, and utilize that to our advantage to ensure that issues are taken seriously and issues are coming across the desks of legislators, and they're becoming fully informed around a particular issue. And so this leads us to communicating with legislators, right? Strategies for effective messaging, right? We want to understand our general legislative priorities, and then we want to also frame our messages around shared values, right? And this connects to, again, this power analysis, right, that we do of both qualitative and quantitative data, right? Maybe a particular legislator, for whatever reason, has a great history of birding, right? And that's something that we learn, and we can use that as a connection point to engage more effectively with that particular legislator, even if maybe other than that, they're not that great on the environment, but that allows us kind of an in and a great conversation piece to really expand across our several different issue areas. One, example case study that we have is this Big Marsh Park wetland restoration messaging. So we had coordinated a number of wetland tours, one of them being at Big Marsh Park um, and Indian Ridge Marsh. We brought Representative Nicholas Smith, as well as the MWRD Commissioner Precious Brady Davis, as well as some folks from some local organizations that were involved in advocating for the restoration at these sites, right? And we emphasize how important it is, especially at this location, that are spaces for the community to engage and connect with nature, and how healing and how critical that is for folks, especially in this particular area that historically has been so dominated by industry, especially very dirty industry, right? So that those natural spaces weren't nearly as a concern or a priority, and emphasizing how different wildlife has rebounded in these areas. So, parents who have never seen this wildlife before are bringing their kids to these sites, and seeing with their kids this new wildlife, or not new, right? This returning wildlife. That it's such a important and personal moment for so many people, where they can continually see restoration in their own communities, and have a better understanding of all the work that's going on, and all the work that's necessary, all the manpower needed to improve and maintain these areas, and all the work that went behind the scenes to ensure that that focus and those needs were met. And we took a lot of footage from these tours in these areas, and we used it in a little promotional video that we displayed at our annual dinner, which again really focuses on the importance of protecting our wetlands in the state of Illinois, and the myriad of benefits that they provide, again, as I already mentioned, right? Flood mitigation, habitat, and clean air and clean water. It's really key to continue informing folks about the importance of these types of ecosystems, as well as just the general issue.
In this, I talk a lot about how lucky we are to work in the conservation space because it's such a bipartisan issue. Everyone we meet, every decision maker we talk to has a tie to nature, whether that's because they're really into the environment, or they bird, or they volunteer at their local land trust, or it's because they like to hunt or fish or drink beer outside on their porch. There's always something that we can connect to them with around nature. And we really work to dial in those messages, so that we can talk to folks on both sides of the aisle, because conservation should be a bipartisan issue. A lot of the times when the rubber meets the road, it isn't, but there's a lot of room for us to find commonality when we target that messaging. So one example of this is we've recently been working on the Indigenous Peoples Conservation Rights Act, which adds Indigenous tribes to the list of entities that can hold a conservation easement. And Jim Johansson came down and testified in committee, and really they gave him a hard time in committee. The Republicans that were there, they gave him a pretty hard time. This was really close to the Shabana Lake land transfer. There was a lot of hot tempers and feelings in the room. And we caught up with one of those Republicans later, and we were talking to him and asking some questions around, like, we know you advocate for private property rights, and this is, a private landowner making a decision about their land that they own. And talking to him about it through that lens, he sort of did like a full 180. He was like, well, who am I to tell someone who owns their land what they are to do with it? And it's so wild because we're talking about the same exact thing. We're just tweaking the way we speak about it. It just gains so much ground. Another example of that is when we talk about wetlands, when we talk about climate. There's some words that when we talk to Republican legislators, we say habitat, we say recreation, uh, economics. We talk about the economics of hunting and fishing around recreation. With other, like maybe more Democratic, more liberal legislators, we talk a lot about the environment and preserving that for future generations. Um, a lot about pollution and keeping our communities and our people safe and having access to those spaces. Uh, the flooding issue is another one where a lot of times we can get to more conservative legislators by talking about the economics of flooding and all of these great nature-based solutions like wetlands, like conservation practices that we can implement in agriculture. So yeah, so just knowing who you're talking to and where you might find alignment and thinking about the ways that you might come at discussing an issue is really helpful.
And so next we'll talk about organizing impactful site tours. We want to again use strategies like our power analysis where we help identify and coordinate with key legislators, and as well as creating an inclusive invite list where maybe there's a couple organizational partners that can really speak to the restoration work or the importance of a particular site to a particular community, right? And it's great to have those voices at these events, at these tours, to highlight how a natural area can be so personal and important to so many people, right? And I think um, letting legislators understand that is really key in creating a memorable and impactful experience. And in addition to that, we want to prepare materials, right? Whether it's maps or fact sheets or policy briefs, and then just for essential logistics, right? Depending on where we're going, we want to make sure we're promoting appropriate attire, different supplies, snacks, and weather considerations. I have personally coordinated tours where uh, it was over 100 degrees. We're all walking outside with umbrellas, and although it was one of the hottest days of the summer, it was still an incredibly memorable experience. Although maybe not entirely positive because it was so hot, but um, you know, it's really really great to be able to prepare and um, even explain how these spaces, even during some of the most extreme weather moments, right, can still be relaxing and appropriate for folks to be able to safely get outside. Um, yeah, and continuing to curate invite lists, showing our wide community and stakeholder support is all part of the importance of uh, informing and educating our legislators. And we do conduct a site tour, right? Most of the time we do a walking tour. Maybe there's a nature center that we'll walk through, and our partner, whoever it may be, can speak more to programming or other communities focused events that are being ran through these centers, which continues to show a demand from the public for really engaging, culturally relevant, or reflective programs that folks will continue to engage with. We want to also have interactive Q&A and discussion with the legislators who are on the tour, right? They're eager to learn more, especially when you're out in these natural areas and these spaces. And it's always nice to have even specific experts, right? Like we've had botanists and arborists who have been a part of these walking tours, and the wealth of information that they can share specifically to the different sites that we visit. It's always eye-opening, it's provoking, it's always nice to see a legislator continue to ask follow-up questions, and these subject matter experts can really provide so much key information that might shift their perspective and help them realize, wow, I didn't realize this particular location was so ecologically complex and important and enriching to so much wildlife in the area. Uh, it's those moments that stick out and help legislators remember those moments, especially as they move forward and continue to engage in issues and pieces of legislation. And it's also just really important to allow organic conversations, right? Answering questions candidly and committing to follow-up if needed, right? Sometimes we don't have all the answers, but that's always just a really good point to maintain connection and say that although we don't have a specific answer for you right now, we'd love to learn more with you and update you as we get more information. Lastly, a part of this is following up and maximizing that impact, right? We want to include personalized thank you messages promptly with photos and information that's requested. We love taking photos. Legislators who come out with this and who bring their teams, they love taking photos as well. I think it's really great that they can display their engagement with their local natural areas. And sharing that event with their social media and internal channels as well. We want to ensure we're continuing to document those outcomes, right? IEC, we have an event tracker where we continue to track all of the things that we do, conversations we have, events that we've coordinated, the attendees, as well as other relevant outcomes of those events. This is a key part of understanding and maintaining an updated, complex of all the things that we do, right? Because although myself and Lindsay, we coordinate tours, like so many other people on our staff also coordinate tours. Maybe they'll bring something up on their tours that has overlap with our issue areas of conservation or agriculture, right? So being able to write that down and share that with our entire team so that we can all be on the same page and be alerted when, oh, this legislator actually mentioned that they want to do this thing in the future, right? It would be great for you to connect very soon after that and try to tee something up that was separate from what they had originally intended, right? So yes, continuing to track, taking pictures, right, is all part of this overall strategy of coordinating really effective site tours. And continuing to mobilize community support as well. We love engaging with community-focused events and continue to educate folks in the community about their legislators, right? We have different reports where folks can see how their legislator has historically voted on a slate of different environmentally focused bills, and it's really helpful for a lot of people to realize, oh wow, I'm not thoroughly engaged with environmental efforts, but it's nice to know that our legislator is an environmental champion. That makes them feel really great, and that might even make them really excited to engage in further environmental opportunities, events, engagement opportunities, right? Or even the opposite, if they find out that their legislator isn't that great, according to our report, they might be eager to participate and do something within their own community. and extending this engagement beyond site tours is incredibly important, right? Grassroots strategies for policy influence is again a big part of this larger mosaic of advocacy and effective strategy for passing bills and creating this larger scale change. And lastly, again, this goes back to measuring advocacy success, right? We want to continue tracking legislative process. We want to assess community engagement. Maybe we haven't engaged with a particular community for a while. We want to look for opportunities to involve them, especially as we look to build wider coalition support and increased awareness across the state for a particular issue, especially if an affected natural area or ecosystem or whatever it may be is present in that particular district. And we're also looking for continuous improvement, right? We learn from our experiences, we learn from our losses, we learn from our failures so that we can continually refine our advocacy strategies that are based on different results, whether they're good and bad. And we'll learn to adapt from those successes and setbacks equally. So what we do at IEC, we establish different metrics, including those legislative advancements, increased public awareness, and we do that through different listserv engagement, and then stronger partnerships, right? How much we're communicating with our different partners, how frequently they're engaging with us, and providing different opportunities for us to work and collaborate. And that brings us to our last slide, which is this interactive Q&A session. We'd love to respond and answer questions and help folks have a better understanding of how they can work within their organization to continue really effective, strategic, data-driven, focused advocacy.
And while people think of their questions and get them going in their brains, I am going to put a plug in for Conservation Lobby Day. So Sergio, if you can go forward, I think 2 slides just so folks can see the graphic. I will paste in the registration. And here's a toddler popping into my office. But let me throw in the registration for Conservation Lobby Day because that is one of our most effective strategies. And it is coming up on April 9th, and there will be a bus from Chicago. So getting all of you or the passionate conservation people in your networks to Springfield to have these conversations with legislators is just a really cool thing that's coming up, and we're excited to get you out and show a lot of support from the conservation community for the pieces of policy that are up this session.
Yep. And Lindsay, this is just our second year doing this.
Only our second year. Yes. Last year was the inaugural.
Yep.
This is the second year. And so it is building. Yeah. There's probably many lobby days that you know about that are huge, huge events. Last year, what did we have, Cynthia? About 30 folks came down, maybe more, 30, 40.
I think so. And we're up to close to 60, I think.
This year, yep, we're just about doubling the amount of registrants. So really looking forward to building steady support over the next few years and maybe having a really growing towards a really big event in the future and showing a huge groundswell of conservation support.
Yeah, and I know, Lindsay, that Mike Carlson is on from Gathering Waters.
Cool.
Which is Mike, if you don't mind coming off, Mike, and sharing with us your Conservation Lobby Day in Wisconsin. So Gathering Waters is the Association of Land Trusts in Wisconsin, PSCC's counterpart there. Are you out there, Mike?
I am. Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Cynthia, and always great to connect with our land trust and conservation friends across the border here. And great presentation, Sergio and Lindsay. Definitely would echo a lot of everything that you've said about the importance of advocacy and sort of the components of it. Certainly follow a similar game plan here in Wisconsin. I think a couple maybe additional thoughts that maybe just to amplify some of what you all were saying. Two thoughts that sort of have rung true here in Wisconsin. One is that we've had a pretty remarkable amount of turnover in our state legislature in the last 4 years, 6 years, past few election cycles, and I think that education piece that you all mentioned is like super, super important. And I think a lot of folks just don't quite realize that there has been that much turnover, and our issues just aren't necessarily well known in some, especially, freshman offices. So I think really emphasizing that sort of education and information sharing is key. And then I think another piece is that, just to amplify, is that we really are playing a long game here, and I think it can be easy to get, frustrated if folks aren't sort of initially champions or supporters. But we even discovered found with our Democratic governor here in Wisconsin, Tony Evers, that, when he first came into office in 2018, the environment was certainly a top priority for him, but sort of helping him and his team understand how land conservation fit in with some of the other sort of environmental priorities that he had run on took some time. And, we've slowly sort of incrementally built him up to be a really, really vocal champion now of land conservation. But it took time and took really, again, sort of having that long game in mind.
Yeah,
So
we're really interested in learning how you did that, because we very similarly over here, Governor Pritzker is a huge champion of climate, of clean energy, but we are having the same challenges around building that connection to land conservation for him.
Yeah, and I think could be probably a
It's
long
a one
conversation about
conservation.
sort of, yeah, exactly how that unfolded for us here in Wisconsin. But I think again it's worth keeping that long game in mind, and it's not always kind of a linear path, I guess. There can be sort of can be kind of a windy path to finally get to where you want to go in terms of really building those champions. I will post in uh, chat. We had our first lobby day. Our state um, funding program for land conservation, which is called the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program, is up for reauthorization in our state budget, which we have a biennial state budget. So that process is kicking off this winter. And this is our first ever lobby day, and it just focused on one issue. So just wanted to share an update on that, which I just posted in the chat. Also, that website that we've got, which we call knowlesnelson.org, has a bunch of different resources on it. I think one thing I love about being in the land trust community is we can kind of learn from each other in different states and around the country. And I know Cynthia and I really enjoy connecting regularly with our counterparts in the Midwest, but also from around the country. And happy to share kind of any details about any of the assets or kind of research or information that we've got on this knowlesnelson.org website. But yeah, I don't know, Cynthia, happy to sort of dive into any specific aspects of this work, but again, I appreciated the presentation today, and always really value the opportunity to collaborate among states. So
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so Lindsay, go ahead and see if there's something else going on in the chat in our last few minutes.
I
Any questions?
saw any other questions. Hallie asked if there was a limit to folks who should come on a lobby day, or a recommended limit when meeting with legislators. And I told her the more the merrier, the more constituents you can pack into an office. Sometimes the stronger you sound. So if you have a ton of people, which what a problem to have. I wish that was the problems that we were facing. So we had too many people that want to meet with their legislators. It's always good to elect a few really knowledgeable, good public speakers to lead the discussion.
And there will be a training. So if people have not done this before, don't worry. Don't, come on out. You won't be alone. There's a chance. And I think there's a date of Monday, next week for a training, prior to Conservation Lobby Day.
Yep, if you register for Lobby Day, you'll get an email that lays out the training, and then you'll receive the recording too if you can't make it during the noon training. And legislators are people. They're just normal people. They go home after session. They're excited to leave early. If Thursday gets canceled, they go home to their families. So that's something that's always helpful to remember. They all have normal people problems, and sometimes they have no idea what you're talking about, and you have to start like I always think about like if I was talking to my parents about some issue that they have absolutely no background on, where I would start. So that's always a good tip. And then if you come to the training, if you're going to come to Lobby Day and you come to the training, the lead affiliates, the experts on the bills, will be the ones walking us through how to talk about their bills. So they'll have a lot of insight on where they've received good reception from different sorts of legislators and different ways to talk about the specific pieces of policy. And just a preview, the things that we'll be advocating for on Lobby Day are the Indigenous Peoples Conservation Rights Act that adds Indigenous tribes to the list of entities that can hold conservation easements, the pesticide notification bill, the wetlands bill, which is restoring wetlands protection after the Sackett federal rollbacks. There may be one more, but I think those are the big top three. Sergio and Cynthia, if you're thinking of any that I'm missing, let me know.
I do feel like there were 4.
I do too.
And that's so interesting, Mike. There was one. So, you don't want to have too many. But just another quick word on, if you haven't met your legislators before, this is an opportunity for you to kickstart some relationships. And if that's what the outcome is, but that's someone that you follow up on and then can invite them to one of your natural areas that is a part of whether you're Boone County Conservation District here or one of the conservation land trusts. Think of it as a beginning, not a one and done, and a building, and a continuation of advocating together. Was there some survey results that you wanted to just share before we let people go? I know it's 4 o'clock now. That went fast.
Yes, it's 4 o'clock, and we didn't break down the survey results. We only had 5 or 6 respondents, but they were really reflective of some of the things that we always hear from our land trust folks. Really follows the pattern of, the barriers are, we are full-time employees with very challenging jobs. Like, we're trying to manage Autumn Olive, and we are out on the land protecting, doing the work. It's hard to prioritize conservation or policy work, and the barrier is, where do we start? How do we talk about it? Are we allowed to talk about it? So those are the things. By just coming to this presentation, you guys are already taking really great steps towards changing that mindset from who on our staff can engage on policy to policy is the work, is one of the biggest sort of changes and mindsets that an organization can take to become leaders there. Other big takeaways from the survey results were that I am actually impressed at the amount of engagement that our land trusts have done. Really proud of you all. We have a similar problem in Illinois, as you guys probably have over there, is that you mentioned in Wisconsin, is that there's been a ton of turnover. So even though I'm so incredibly proud of the work and the engagement that the land trusts have done, we've got all new people. So we've got to keep it going. We've got to build those new relationships with freshman legislators. We have to say, hey, we just did a tour 3 years ago of this beautiful place, and now we need to invite the next person out because it feels like it was yesterday, but now we have someone new to share it with. So keeping in the loop of who's coming in and out is super helpful too, and you guys are out there on the front lines doing that work. The last thing I will leave you with is that when you come to Conservation Lobby Day, if you do, we have these really great district specific maps that map out the specific district for every legislator. And one thing about legislators is they just absolutely drool over something that is all about their district. So these maps, even if no conversation goes well in that office, are a good tool to say, hey, here's your district. This is where we are. Have you been to any of these places? And then just like Cynthia said, you can leave with, well, if you haven't been here, we'd love to have you out. And maybe we'll find some common ground about something else then when you come out this summer.
Yeah, and like you went, how you started, Lindsay and Sergio, and thank you both so much. It's that when you build these relationships and you're working, building that community, that conservation community, and the champions that are there that don't know they're going to be champions yet in the legislature. You know, that's how when a bill comes up a couple of years from now, you get the votes that you want to see that will benefit the natural areas that you're trying to protect. So it's exciting. It's a really awesome time, and we're excited to have that second annual Conservation Lobby Day. And again, thank you both so much. We really look forward to our time together in Springfield. And this this program will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel if you'd like to watch it again and get more information, and it'll be shared more broadly. Any last words from our speakers? And thank you again, and thanks to everyone for being here.
Thanks for having us. Email me anytime with any question, concern, maybe just some good tea about a legislator that you're excited to share that might help our conversations here in Springfield. So
Yep,
any of that.
exactly. If you have those relationships, let us know and see how we can build that together.
Yeah, and if anyone is interested or eager to want to coordinate a legislative tour and wants to work with us, and we've done them before, we've done several successfully, right? They're kind of
Excellent
secondhand
plug.
nature to us. We can really help with that and really make sure it's impactful and beneficial to everyone.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. If you don't have the capacity to plan a tour, get a hold of Sergio or I, and we will help pull all of the things together and get folks out to your space.
Yes, and if you would like a follow-up on that specifically about how to run a legislator tour, because that is something that through PSEC we would love our Conservation Land Trust and all of our other members to start doing more of. And we've got, again, Lindsay is on our board of directors, statewide IEC conservation persons also. So you're in good hands. we can help make this happen, and that's something that PSEC really advocates for, because there's nothing like getting out on the land to help educate and get off the front porch, even though that's a nice place to be.